Okay, perfect. So I guess we'll get started here. We're gonna kind of go slowly so we give people a chance to join in because this is live on Facebook and we haven't really done this before. So we may be repeating ourselves a little bit. But welcome. This is a session with the Global Initiative for DEI in Curling. And like I said before, we don't typically do live sessions like this, but we had some really exciting information from the WCF the other day that they're looking for a couple new board members. And we wanted to get the word out to our audience as soon as possible because we obviously care a lot about getting more diversity in our sport, and this is a great opportunity for that to happen. I'm Monica Walker. I'm an athlete with USA Curling, but I'm here representing myself today, and I'm one of the leaders of the Global Initiative. And I'm joined with Sarah Carlson, and she works for Swedish Curling, but she's also here representing herself, and she's another leader with the initiative. And I'm also joined by Dr. McCharles, and he's an academic with our group, and he recently did a webinar called Staffing Up for Inclusion that you can find in our YouTube archive. So he's kind of our expert on, staffing and governance within organizations. So I'm really glad to have both of you guys here today, and we're just going to kind of have an informal discussion about the information that the WCF put out and kind of what we think about it and how we can hopefully encourage people to submit their nominations. I just wanted to make a quick disclaimer that we're here to provide information. We're not trying to critique the WCF. Like, we are champions of the WCF and we support them 100%. I'd also like to say, if you're tuning in live and you think that, oh, I'm not going to submit my nomination for the board of directors for the WCF, this doesn't impact me, I would say, hold on, like, this actually does impact you, and we actually do need your help in spreading the word about this awesome opportunity. So please listen in and keep watching because it does actually impact you. So I guess a good place to start is kind of showing, I'm going to share my screen here and show the information about what the WCF is looking for. And I'll just kind of have, hopefully you can see my screen here. Can you see that?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, yeah, Sarah, I don't know if you want to, we can just kind of explain a little bit about, what the WCF is looking for. Actually, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so there are two positions up this coming General Assembly, and it's Vice President for Americas, as well as one director. And I think it's a really good thing what the World Curling Federation has been doing this year, which is that they've actually have a nomination committee that's put together a structure for what they're looking for with the board. We're going to see it later. There's a skills matrix, and they've analyzed the board right now, and just seeing what do we actually need to make sure that our board is as complete as possible. But Karen, if you are there, could you maybe tell us a bit more about what the vice president does? Because I think we had a few questions about that. If she's still
I'm gonna
here.
allow her to talk really quickly. If she doesn't want to, this is very ad hoc, so forgive us, Karen, but
no problem. I'm unmuted. So I think it's important to draw the distinction between the vice president and the other director role, because the vice president for Americas must come from the Americas zone. So that is one key thing. So it's geographically linked. So if you're not from an MA that is in the Americas zone, you cannot apply for that position. And secondly, what is the role of the VP? So currently the VP role is representing its constituents in the zone and is responsible for running the zonal meetings that are held within the annual general meeting, and sometimes semi-annually as well, and also for ongoing correspondence between the member associations in their zone back to the board. So a sort of a feedback conduit of communication.
That's great. We also noticed we were a bit confused about the position of the director that you're looking for. So we saw that on this document here, it says position 1, but in another place, I think it said position 3. Would you be able to clarify that for us as well?
I don't think the position is actually meaning anything. It's just that there's one place. So there's one director because there's 8 directors altogether on the board. 3 of them are, one's your president, 3 are vice presidents, and the remainder just are called director because they're not associated with a special role.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Karen.
And Karen, can I just ask one quick clarifying question as well? So the Vice President of the Americas, so that would be a member association. So they have to be from a country in North, Central, or South America. And then the director could be from any member association country?
That's exactly right. There is also, and I think you'll see it later on within the rules, that there may never be more than 2 individuals on the board from the same member association. So for example, if the current incumbent to the vice president role of the Americas is in Canada, there may be 1 additional board member from Canada. So you also, I think that's something that the nominations committee will look at. So I would not limit the people who are, if people are interested in applying, they should still apply, but they may get kicked out of the system if there's actually already 2 individuals from their country sitting on the board.
Okay.
But I'd say it's more important to show interest, and we'll look at the details later.
Yeah, definitely. And going through the process can be really great too, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah, so just to kind of touch on some of the other key points of this document here, the board operates in English, and so that's kind of a key requirement, both spoken and written, for somebody who's thinking about applying for this. And then also this details kind of the commitment level, the hours you can expect to put towards this, how many days away from home, and it's actually quite in-depth and useful in my opinion. So that's all available too. And as we go, if anybody's looking for these documents, I think we'd be happy to provide them. So just send us an email at globalcurlingdei@gmail.com, and I'll repeat this throughout the session, but we can help get you in contact with this information. So moving on, I wanted to talk a bit about the actual form itself. So I'll just bring that up as well. Kind of walk everybody through what that looks like. Oops. Okay. So this is the form that you would kind of submit if you were interested in applying for this position. And at the top, it kind of talks about, there's some key differences here that we really wanted to highlight that we care about from kind of a DEI lens. The first and most important, I think, being that, anybody can kind of self-nominate. So member associations in the past would nominate their candidates for these positions, but now that doesn't actually have to happen. Anybody can self-nominate themselves. And Jeff, do you want to talk a bit about, why that's so important and what that means?
Yeah, I think especially when we talk about governance structures, a lot of times there's sort of this underlying power structure that is there, and there's all this sort of connections and networking that exist, which can have, which can make it difficult to bring in maybe new voices or new people who have different experiences into the process. So, in some cases, it may be very political to get that nomination from your member association. But in this way, where, the WCF has decided to open up to, anybody. So anybody, is able to put their name forward, or be nominated by someone else. It doesn't have to be a member association. Perhaps, it is somebody in your curling club who decides to nominate you or something like that. Or maybe, you're a volunteer with your provincial organization or with your national organization. And so you're able to have that opportunity to go forward and to serve in one of these roles. And so really it's about, we talk about trying to increase diversity, especially at a board level. You need to remove as many barriers as possible that are going to make it structurally challenging for people who maybe not represented in all spaces to actually sort of progress to those board ranks. So I think that was a good decision by the WCF to make that change, in addition to sort of the whole nominations committee that they put together.
Definitely. Yes, and just underneath that, it talks a bit about what Sarah was saying before and what you just mentioned, that this nominations committee is a little bit of a new thing moving forward, and something that I think is really valuable to bring structure to this whole process, and having a more objective lens, I guess, going forward. And Sarah, do you want to add anything about that, your experience in the past, or what you think this change kind of does for the WCF moving forward?
I think it's really important from both to get a structure, make sure that you have the skill sets that you need on the board, rather than what might otherwise happen, that we choose people that we know or that we recognize the name of. Now we will make sure that there are the skills that are needed.
Exactly.
So from a governance standpoint, I think it's really good. It's really important. And I also think, and Karen, you can correct me here, but I think risk management is one of the main things that you are looking for to add to the board skill set right now. So anyone, if you know anyone that's really good just with risk management and would be a good person on the board, then they would be extra interesting
Yes.
to nominate.
And we will definitely go through this skills matrix in a bit. I'm just noticing here, so this form is asking for candidates to provide a video of no more than 5 minutes in length. And I think that's a really great, I don't know if that was done before, but I think that's a really great step forward as well. It kind of allows somebody to show who they are and what they're all about and how they present themselves in a way that you just can't get from, written word. Jeff, do you have any thoughts about that at all?
Yeah, I think that anytime you can provide more information about yourself, a lot of my research focuses on signaling from potential employers to potential employees, and also potential employees to employers. And we have a lot of information asymmetry between those two parties, where we're trying to figure out more about each other. So anytime you can provide more information about yourself as an employee to an employer, you can provide really important signals to them that allow them to get a better sense of who you are as an individual and who you might be as an employee in the organization. So I think that anytime that you can add sort of those different layers and build those pieces that can be put together to sort of develop a clearer picture of who this person might be. Because again, we're always going to, when we're hiring somebody or when we're selecting somebody for one of these positions, like a board position, you only know so much about them before they get in to do work for you. So you want to try to glean as much information as you can. So again, adding on to just supplementing, or submitting sort of forms and supplementary evidence or a CV or something like that, by having that video, it can actually be quite powerful to be able to hear the words and sort of to see the expressions on the person's face as they're explaining why this is really important for them to apply for this position and to get it and what they would do.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. If anyone's kind of tuning in right now, we're just kind of going through the recent WCF call for board member candidates, and we're just kind of going through the documentation so that people can be familiar with them. And I just want to reiterate again that we are in full support of the WCF. We think there's some great new processes here that we want to highlight, and we're also very much encouraging people, if they're not themselves interested in nominating for these board positions, to also consider their network and think outside of even the curling world to people that they may know who might be a really great candidate for these positions. So let's just go through this nomination form briefly. The first thing that I notice is we've talked about this already, but the fact that you can self-nominate, like I am a member of blank member association, and not necessarily the member association nominating candidates themselves. That just opens this up to a whole array of new people that might be part of this. The next thing I notice is the gender classification has other included, and I think that's probably a new thing. And I don't know if Sarah or Jeff, if you have anything you want to add about that.
I think it's also important that it says I identify as, which is probably also a change from before.
That is, it's more inclusive wording, and whenever you can do that, especially on things like registration forms or nomination forms. That's really important to show that inclusivity and to not just think about gender as being a binary construct, because we know that it is not. One thing I did actually just want to quickly ask for clarification on, maybe from Karen, is, Karen, when it says I'm a member of blank member association, so would that mean if I'm in the United States, I have to be a paying member of a club and such a member of the USCA in order to apply? Or does that just sort of signify that you're in this country just so that you can be sure that it is in the right zone or something like that?
That's a good question, Jeff, because the intention was that this is within the curling world. So the assumption was already that these are individuals who are in some respect connected to curling. So that was the intent. Now, whether you need to be a paying individual, I don't think we were looking at that, but it's not something that we have analyzed further. And the reason that we're also asking is because of what I said earlier, is that, you know, we don't want people from the same area so that we get diversity of geography as well. So that was the real reason for asking. Digging deeper into whether you're a paying member is not something that we had delved into. So I'll take the, it needs further clarification on that, but.
Yeah, it might be something to think about. I mean, if you are looking for people involved in the curling world, then, you know, that makes a lot of sense. But if you're open to people from outside the curling world, then that might be something to shift the language on a little bit. Jeff, sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, and to sort of build on that, you know, it's, you know, it doesn't even have to be that you're entirely disconnected from curling. You could be laterally connected. You know, you could be an organization that is, you know, you could be a member of a business or an organization that might, you know, partner with National Curling Federation or provincial governing body or something like that, and you might have interest in the sport. You just might not be a paying member of a club somewhere. So just making sure that it's kind of open to that sort of a broader, you know, that broader range, or, you know, was being restricted to basically the clarification on the word member was what I was looking for, just so that people would know. And the big thing with all of these documents is that you want to be able to, again, it's about what signals are you sending that show that you're inclusive. You know, you're specifically talking about you must have curling experience, or you must explain your curling experience in your CV or in your cover letter. If you broaden it to sporting experience or voluntary experience, which you've done and Monica's going to get at in a second, but, you know, that's, again, sort of creating these more, you know, it's broadening your pool basically. So just making sure that if you're using words like member, everybody knows what it means, so that it doesn't necessarily make somebody feel like, oh, you know, oh, I probably can't apply for this because I'm not a member of a club right now. Like for me, I'm not a member of a club right now. So I'm not a paying member of the USCA, but I consider myself somebody to be connected to the curling world. So for me, I look at this and I think, would I be eligible for this? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and just to build off of what you were saying, I was definitely going to point out the part down here that candidates are expected to attach a CV looking for their professional experience, but also their sporting and voluntary experience. And I think that's a great way of wording it. You know, obviously our initial thought when looking for candidates for a board in the World Curling Federation is to think about curlers. But in reality, you know, maybe the position could be held by somebody who also works in a different sport or has sporting experience in general. Is there anything about, you know, knowing curling specifically that is required for this job? Maybe not. So I love the wording there. I think that's great. Was there anything else you guys wanted to add about this form before we move on? No?
Oh, I'm good.
I can just add, Karen said that it's not just risk management, it's also marketing that they're looking for on the skill set on the board right now.
Perfect. So that's a good segue into the final document, which is the skills matrix. I'll just bring that up. And just to reiterate, you know, I think just having this down on paper is a really great way to ensure being objective when, you know, evaluating candidates. So there's a lot of kind of values that are listed here, and, you know, some of the ones that stand out to me right off the bat are the continuous improvement mindset or change orientation. adapting to differences and changes in the environment, taking a flexible approach to reach outcomes. And I think, that applies to a wide range of topics, but from a DEI lens, I think that that's a really great mindset to have, looking for opportunities for continuous improvement within an organization. The other one that stands out to me is this diversity awareness. I'm calling it a value. So it says they have a genuine interest in and appreciation for the different perspectives and valuable diversity that comes with the experience of working in a multicultural environment. And that's a little bit hard to define, or know what that looks like in real life necessarily. But I think that this is I'm very excited that this value is on here, and that the WCF considers this something that they want their board members to have. Do you guys have any thoughts on this piece?
I would just add empathetic and understanding as well, I think is another one that, when it comes to celebrating diversity, equity, and inclusion, we want our leaders to be empathetic. We want them to be able to understand those that are different than them. And so I think that's another important part. And I think WCF refers to these as foundational attributes that they want all board members to have, which I think is really, really important, because we talk a lot about, and I know that Dr. Norman talked about this in his talk, with tokenism and things like that too, where you don't just want to put somebody in a position who fits a characteristic, and then they're expected to be the ones that focus solely on the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so you're always asking the one racial minority or the one sexual minority or the one woman on the board to deal with the diversity and inclusion stuff. But ideally, all board members should really have that as a foundational perspective. And so I think by listing it as a foundational attribute is really important. I think there's value also in seeking out or in hiring, people to the board that have actual skill sets in that, in diversity, equity, inclusion as well. So whether they've worked on it in their jobs, whether they work for, a tech firm, or they work for, a bank, or whoever it may be, and they've maybe worked in those spaces or have experience, I think that that's really important. But as a whole, it is critical that the whole board sees that as a foundational value and a foundational attribute for, being put on the board, is really to have that mindset.
Yeah. I think that if we can just stay there too, of course, people should have that value, but to take it one step further, it might also be a good thing to say we also provide just some basic training or education once you come on the board, to make sure that everyone has a ground level of knowledge, of structures and such, just to know that you have that basic ground.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and maybe you and I should get working on that right away, so we can provide it to the WCF.
Jeff can work on it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's important to point out, Sarah, because again, diversity, equity, and inclusion are not. It's not something that, you can just get a certification in and just say, tick, I did it once, or I did a training once, or something about that. It's an ongoing thing that needs to be, there needs to be ongoing education for people that even, study this stuff and sort of work in this space and do this research. We're constantly learning, and there's always changes, and there's new research coming out all the time. So it's important that, especially with board members that are going to be serving, say, 4-year terms, there's going to be ample time for them to be able to sort of get both the onboarding training they need, but sort of that continual professional development. And maybe that's something that becomes part of, annual general meeting type activities, or, maybe it's an online sort of webinar or something that they're going to do, or continuous training. But there's all kinds of things that can be taught. And Sarah, it's such an important point that we can't just say, oh yeah, they have some experience, so we'll tick the box and they're good. They're going to be good for their 4 years on the board. It's that we want to make sure that we're supporting them and training them and helping them grow and to be more successful in that space.
Yeah, I think you both have great points, and I'm really glad that you said all that. It's an ongoing process, right? This isn't probably never over. So just having that mindset of continuous improvement is really great, I think. So moving on, I just think this paragraph is great. It's all stuff I actually wasn't really aware of before. Maybe it's relatively new, but I'm just going to read it. The WCF's forward plan values respect for differences of thought, opinions, and worldview. Candidates for election to the board who bring with them perspectives and experiences from minority groups will be valued, and such perspective will be treated as an additional and equally important competency. Additionally, as the world body, the WCF values a geographically diverse board and will seek to ensure a wide variety of voices are heard around the board table. And I think that's a great thing to just say very explicitly like that. And I hope that it encourages people to apply because that's actually written down on paper. And then, you know, this little piece here about having a maximum of 60% coming from any single gender. I'm not sure if that's necessarily being enforced yet, but it's great that it's down there as well as a goal to strive towards. Do you guys have any thoughts about this? It's a little bit tricky to navigate, given that gender is a bit fluid these days and not necessarily so binary, but.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, as long as because you can choose what gender you identify as, and that's what you will count towards. I think that's really important. But also having a maximum of 60% coming from any single gender, just making sure that there is representation from more than one gender and more towards an equal representation too. I think it's really important. And we also know from your webinar, Jeff, that diverse boards also make better decisions.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, I think that what's important about that statement is that, you know, they're committed to not loading a board with all men or something like that. And we know that in the sport industry in particular, it's typically older, white, straight men that are in leadership positions. And so we need to start thinking much more broadly than that, particularly on boards. And so I think what I take from that statement is that, you know, they're committed to not loading it up, you know, to sort of be very, very homogeneous. They're looking at ways to diversify. And I also hope, you know, that within sort of the gender diversity is obviously important. And we're very lucky that we have a lot of key leaders. I mean, you know, I look at Kate Caithness, you know, and things like that. So we have a lot of really strong leadership, and Catherine Henderson with Curling Canada, and you know, so there are a lot of really strong women leaders in curling, and I think that's great. But I also hope, especially through this nominations process, that we'll be able to start to see some more other minorities get these positions, whether they be racial minorities or sexual minorities, or people of different ability levels that are serving in these high up positions on the board. And so gender is obviously important, but we also want to think about all the other dimensions of diversity that we would love to see represented on this board. And the other point that I want to make, so that I don't forget, but this is kind of a good segue, is that this again is the first time for this process working this way. And from what I can see, it feels like it's creating more of an inclusive pool potentially, or sort of a broader pool of applicants if it's done correctly, and if we all get the word out, and if we all get these nominations, and if these people we think are great. And but it'll be interesting to look at how this process goes, and who is the pool that comes out of this. You know, who does the nomination committee look to and sort of go through all of this list and say these people are qualified, and thus, you know, the members should vote on them. So, you know, I'm going to be looking closely, and I know that we all will be, sort of how this process goes over the next few months, and to sort of see what kind of a candidate pool we get out of this, and then what we can take from it and learn for it for next time, to make sure that we're really amplifying that diversity angle.
Definitely. And then just, you know, to wrap this up, wanted to look at some of these competencies that are on the skills matrix. This is the risk one that is a priority, I believe, for these candidates. So you can read that in your own time. Additionally, there was a marketing one as well, down here, marketing and brand. Did you guys want to talk about any of these in particular? I think they're self-explanatory, and I think they're well thought out, and it's great to see them written in a way that can really be objective, so that candidates can be critiqued in an objective way.
Yeah, I would agree. And, you know, a lot of the competencies are, you know, things that we would expect to see in board members. So that's great. The other thing that I think that is good is that when you read these things, again, I'm not seeing anywhere that, you know, I specifically have to have some experience in curling, that I have to have been a curler all of my life. These are skills that are transferable. You know, risk management, overseeing a team of people as a chief risk officer of an organization or equivalent could be an example of somebody who has a lot of that good experience. Maybe somebody who has a legal background or things like that might fit in this position. And so, you know, I think that the way that they've set it up is that they're looking at how they can be very sort of open and really cast a wide net for some of these candidates. And so that we're not saying specifically, again, that they have to be situated within the curling world already, or already be sort of a high level curler, or be very, very involved in a curling club. There are other ways, maybe this is just a part-time curler who's on our webinar right now, or who's watching the recording and is interested, is maybe of a marginalized background and thinks about the wanting ways to get involved. And maybe they're a lawyer at a company and they have experience in risk, and you could be a great person for this role. And so you should really throw your hat into the ring, because this nomination process is different now. We're going to see what comes out of it, but we hope that it's going to generate, a very diverse crop of candidates that member associations are going to be really sort of spoiled to vote on.
Yeah, and I think the point is, we're not trying to say that, we don't have great people in the curling world. That's simply not true. Like, we have great people that are involved in curling, and the point is that that's where we go to initially, and we don't have to do that. We can actually broaden out and expand our horizons and look at people that have other skill sets. And the point being that, that only makes our sport better if we have people from all different backgrounds involved in, making our sport better. So, great. Well, I'm glad we got a chance to kind of go through those documents, and there's a lot of exciting, changes, and I'm excited for how this kind of process goes, and we'll definitely plan something for, after the fact to kind of evaluate it. But is there anything, you'd like to add just in closing, any last messages to anybody who might be watching us live, or any last thoughts?
Sarah, you want to go first?
No pressure.
No, I just think about people that and ask them. If they want to, then they want to, and I think the nominations committee would be thrilled to get in a lot of nominations from different people, and more people than we've seen before. So nominate. Those are my only last words.
I would echo those words. Nominate those people that you feel like would make a good contribution. And again, the people that are interested in this and really committed to this, who are live right now with us, or who are watching, the recording later, you want to change the face of curling just like we do. So how do we do that? We all have to put in the work. We all have to work towards that and do it. So I think that we just need to, again, sort of look at those we know, look in our curling clubs. Like Monica said, it's not that there aren't great people in curling already. There are a lot of them, but we want to be able to, bring in those different ideas and perspectives. And that's what makes organizations so much better. So, and I think, the fact that the World Curling Federation is, that Karen's here today, and that, she was okay with us sort of doing this and pushing this out to those that follow us, really shows their commitment to wanting us to work together. And oh, my puppy's made an appearance. It's almost that time. It's lunchtime, right? So I just think that I really, feel grateful that they're involving us in this, and that, I think that it demonstrates that they're looking for ways to really improve their board, and that overall will help improve the game of curling worldwide. So that's what we all want. And yeah, so nominate, just like Sarah said, find those people that you think would be great. Look in your networks, and recommend to them and tell them why it's important that they do this. And again, a lot of people are looking to join boards. A lot of people are interested. They don't quite really maybe know how to make those connections, or they're not quite sure where their skill sets might fit well. But the WCF has done a really good job, especially with the matrix and things like that, to demonstrate how you can fit into a position like this. So I think that we need to use the resources that they've given us, and to use that to sort of talk it up to people and get people to apply. And hopefully, like I've said a million times on this webinar so far, really sort of get that really nice big crop of candidates that will kind of, be really great for our member associations to vote on. And they'll sort of, and whoever they choose will be a great board member in the end. That's what we want.
Definitely. Karen, I don't know if you'd like to say anything. You're definitely welcome to.
Well, I just want to say, I think you guys did a really good job on walking through the nomination process, the skill set. And I think it's very important that we need to open up. We won't get new nominations if we don't look at different sources of where we and who we talk to. So I think this has been a great initiative. I think it's also really important that this is not a one-time only. This is a beginning of a process, and we're looking for a pipeline. We're looking for future board ready. So maybe you're not ready yet, but start to engage with the WCF, because maybe there's different roles that you can get involved in that would start to prepare you for the board role in the future. So I think that's my key message, that this is not a one-time only. This is a wider process. We're looking for building the pipeline for the future board-ready individual. So get involved. Be involved with your local governance, in your clubs, in your MAs, build your governance skills, and we'd like to see you contributing to the World Curling Federation.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. Thanks for letting us put you on the spot a little bit. I know this was very informal and last minute. And thank you, Sarah and Jeff, for joining me today to just kind of go through this and discuss this. This is very important to all of us. And finally, I'd just like to say, please email us at globalcurlingdei@gmail.com if you want more information about this process, or if we can provide you with the forms that are out there from the WCF. We're happy to make that connection. And also, feel free to reach out to us in any way about anything. We're always here to talk about this stuff. And that's all I have for today. Unless you guys have anything else, I think we'll log off for now. And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.